Good morning, and welcome to day 2 of the America's Health Ethics Virtual Forum. My name is Andrew Blasey, Technical Secretariat for this event and Director at Crowell & Moring International, joining you from Washington, D.C. We welcome you back to the largest gathering ever held in the Americas focused on reinforcing ethics and health, with nearly 1,000 delegates joining from across the region, from Canada to Chile, and representing all aspects of healthcare and the health economy, from diverse government agencies to civil society, including patients and healthcare professionals, to the private sector. Building on yesterday's numerous announcements and discussions, today we are going to delve even deeper into what stakeholders can do together to reinforce ethics and health as we look ahead. Before we begin today's program, I have 2 logistical reminders. First, to listen to the forum's remarks in English, Portuguese, or Spanish, please use the interpretation button, which is located at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and select the language you prefer. Second, in the event that you become disconnected for any reason today or are having trouble with your calendar link for this event, you can quickly rejoin the forum directly from the event's virtual website. A live link has been activated there to make it easy for you to access today's program. With that said, let's absolutely begin today's session. I'd now like to turn the floor over to Mr. Nacho Abia, Chief Executive Officer for the Americas and Chief Operating Officer worldwide for Olympus Corporation, as well as a member of the Board of Directors of the Advanced Medical Technology Association, AdvaMed, who will introduce today's opening keynote speaker. Mr. Abia, it's wonderful to see you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrew, and good morning, participants, to the second day of the America's Health Ethics Virtual Forum. Today's sessions are all geared up to help us delve deeper into the many important aspects and stakeholder perspectives in fostering ethics and integrity across the region's health systems. As the Chief Executive Officer for the Americas of Olympus Corporation, and as a member of the Advanced Medical Technology Association, or AdvaMed, Board of Directors, I've seen the role that sound ethics plays in driving patient-centered healthcare. Is one of the largest components of our economy, but perhaps the only component whose success underpins all others. Sound ethical behavior in our health systems also underpins national economic growth and sustainability. Now, perhaps more than ever, we need all our stakeholders to work together to uplift best practices. From the private sector's implementation of high standard codes of conduct, to government embrace of good regulatory practice, as well as enforcement and procurement regimes that put ethical businesses first. Since the 2018 Summit of the Americas in Peru, we are thrilled to report that the Inter-American Coalition for Business Ethics in the medical technology sector has achieved universal code of ethics adoption by every medical technology industry association in the Western Hemisphere. I'm honored to introduce this morning keynote speaker, Mauricio Claver-Carone, President of the Inter-American Development Bank, or IDB. Mauricio and the IDB are stalwart champions of efforts to elevate ethics and integrity, as well as good regulatory practices across the region's health system. Elected to lead the IDB nearly 1 year ago, he was openly embraced the role of civil society and the private sector to work closely with governments in achieving these goals. And sure enough, with this inclusive posture, great progress has and will continue to be made. The medtech sector is honored to support these efforts. Prior to his elections to the IDB, Mr. Claver-Carone served as Deputy Assistant to the President of the United States and Senior Director for Western Hemisphere Affairs at the National Security Council. In this capacity, he was the US President's principal advisor on issues related to the region. During his tenure, Mr. Carone conceptualized a whole-of-government economic growth initiative, America Crece, or Growth in the Americas, and also spearheaded the first White House-led Western Hemisphere strategic framework for U.S. interagency policy guidance and development. Mr. Claver-Carone also served as the United States Executive Director at the International Monetary Fund and Senior Advisor for International Affairs at the U.S. Department of the Treasury, where he was a principal policy advisor to the Secretary of the Treasury on geopolitical, national security, and economic issues. Mauricio, we are honored to have you speak with us today, and thank you for your leadership. The stage is yours.
Muy buenos días y gracias Nacho por su amable presentación y por su liderazgo en Olympus Corporation de Americas, así como en AdvaMed, apoyando la salud y el éxito de las personas en las Américas. Es un honor para mí iniciar las sesiones de hoy con nombre del Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo y del diálogo empresarial de las Américas, que ha desempeñado un papel central en el trabajo con los gobiernos de la región, con el sector privado, la sociedad civil, para fortalecer la inversión y promover el crecimiento económico sostenible e inclusivo. La ética y la integridad empresarial son claves en todos los sectores de la economía, incluida la salud. Y el BID está comprometido a trabajar con los sectores público y privado para avanzar en esta agenda. Necesitamos un contexto de gobernabilidad transparente para alcanzar el crecimiento económico sostenible y aumentar la productividad a medida que nuestra región continúa enfrentando la pandemia del COVID-19 y el restablecimiento de los servicios sanitarios esenciales y, obviamente, la recuperación económica. Los problemas de integridad y rendimiento de cuentas requieren un enfoque de niveles múltiples que involucre la acción colectiva de los gobiernos, del sector privado, la sociedad civil, las instituciones internacionales y para abordar las raíces de la corrupción mediante iniciativas globales, regionales y nacionales. Para poder alcanzar estas metas, es necesario que los sectores público y privado colaboren, que coincidan en la importancia de mantener los más altos estándares de ética y de integridad que regirán sus acciones. Durante su reunión en Lima en el 2018, los jefes de Estado de las Américas se comprometieron precisamente con este enfoque y acordaron, entre comillas, promover códigos de conducta para los servidores públicos que contengan altos estándares de ética, probidad, integridad, transparencia e instar al sector privado a desarrollar códigos de conducta similares. La corrupción es un problema complejo que amenaza el acceso a la atención médica, la equidad y los resultados. Los líderes del sector de la salud y los ciudadanos de todos los países reconocen cada vez más los efectos perniciosos de la corrupción y la necesidad de actuar. Los esfuerzos por desglosar los problemas específicos de la corrupción en el sector sanitario, identificar y comprender sus causas fundamentales, pueden ayudarnos a enfrentar este difícil desafío. Al aplicar la teoría a las realidades locales, cuidadosamente estudiadas por todos, podremos diseñar juntos programas más efectivos para minimizar riesgos, aliviar presiones y fortalecer la resistencia a la corrupción. De manera similar, el diálogo también sugirió, entre comillas, incentivar al sector privado para que adopte mecanismos completos para proteger la integridad, incluidos los códigos de conducta corporativa. Aquí en el BID estamos trabajando y seguiremos trabajando en estrecha colaboración con los actores clave de la región para destacar las mejores prácticas y desarrollar capacidades donde más se necesiten. Y esto no solo incluye la adopción y la implementación de los códigos de conducta, sobre los que seguiremos hablando obviamente hoy, sino que también incluye el fomento de la integridad de las adquisiciones públicas, así como la eliminación de la corrupción, adoptando buenas prácticas de transparencia y de convergencia regulatoria. De hecho, hemos aportado recursos financieros y estamos implementando un proyecto de asistencia técnica con el objetivo de ayudar a los países de la región a desarrollar códigos de conducta empresariales, generales y sectoriales para aumentar la capacidad del sector público a fin de promover la transparencia y la integridad del sector privado. Y fieles a la necesidad de trabajar juntos, esto lo estamos haciendo en asociación con el diálogo y AdvaMed y, por ejemplo, colaborando con la Confederación Nacional de Instituciones Empresariales Privadas del Perú. También hemos desarrollado y lanzado en varios países de la región una herramienta que llamamos Mapa Inversiones, que permite a los ciudadanos monitorear en tiempo real cómo y en qué invierte sus recursos el gobierno. Además de permitir que cuenten con información de calidad que apoye su toma de decisiones y contribuya a mejorar la eficiencia de las inversiones, asimismo, esta herramienta ayuda a las empresas a aumentar su competitividad al operar en un ambiente de información abierta. Mapa Inversiones es el resultado de nuestro fondo de transparencia, que cuenta con el aporte de Noruega, Suecia, Italia y Canadá, y también del sector privado. Y ahí Microsoft ha sido un socio clave al aportar la tecnología que facilita esta plataforma. En Paraguay y en otros países, Mapa Inversiones ha incorporado módulos sobre el COVID-19 para rastrear el gasto público, lo que permite a la ciudadanía acceder a la información relacionada con el gasto en salud, infraestructura, como hospitales, por ejemplo, y la adquisición de medicamentos. La nueva fórmula de integridad es el acceso a la información a través de las tecnologías digitales. Y me siento orgulloso que la calidad de las instituciones, la transparencia y la integridad son temas centrales y transversales para el Grupo BID. Estos están claramente alineados en lo que es nuestra estrategia institucional, también en las recomendaciones de políticas y el Plan de Acción para el Crecimiento de las Américas y en el marco sectorial de transparencia e integridad, entre otros. Y por supuesto, en nuestra guía de ruta para acelerar la recuperación socioeconómica de la región, que es la Visión 2025 llamada Reinvertir en las Américas. En nuestra Visión 2025 Identificamos áreas prioritarias para acelerar la recuperación de la región y que resurja más competitiva, más igualitaria y mejor equipada para afrontar los distintos desafíos actuales y futuros. Las áreas prioritarias son la integración y las cadenas de valor regional, apoyar las pequeñas y medianas empresas, fomentar la digitalización que impulse la competitividad y la innovación, impulsar la diversidad y la inclusión de género y la acción ante el cambio climático. Para lograr alcanzar esta visión es indispensable vencer la corrupción y la falta de transparencia en todas las áreas e instituciones. Todos coincidimos en que la calidad de las instituciones y la transparencia son temas transversales y fundamentales para la gobernanza democrática, para la prestación efectiva de servicios públicos y para el establecimiento de un clima de negocios que incentive la inversión y que respalde el desarrollo del sector privado. En colaboración con el diálogo, también hemos realizado un importante trabajo en la adopción de buenas prácticas regulatorias, incluidas las áreas de dispositivos médicos del sector sanitario. Nuestra región de América Latina y del Caribe es excepcional, con ciudadanos dinámicos, diversos, emprendedores, que están ansiosos por mejorar sus economías y sus sociedades. Y para poder fortalecer verdaderamente la inversión y el crecimiento económico sostenible para nuestros ciudadanos, es necesario priorizar todos los esfuerzos a fin de erradicar la corrupción y defender la integridad. Y afortunadamente sabemos lo que se debe hacer. Así que ahora es el momento de pasar a la acción. Es hora de que juntos realicemos el cambio que buscamos. Este es el primer evento, el Foro Virtual de las Américas Ética en Salud, y reúne a las personas adecuadas en el momento adecuado para generar resultados significativos. Así que les reitero que cuentan con nosotros, con el BID y con el Diálogo Empresarial de las Américas para seguir avanzando la ética, la transparencia y la integridad empresarial en todos los sectores, incluida la salud. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, President Claver-Carone and Mr. Abia, for your opening remarks, which are truly a perfect transition to our next session, where I'm honored to facilitate a discussion with two leaders on the Inter-American Development Bank's technical cooperation engaged together to promote codes of ethics. For this discussion, I am joined by Roberto de Michele, Principal Specialist for Modernization of the State at the IDB, and a well-respected leader in strengthening ethics and transparency across the region. I'm also joined by Mr. Oscar Caipo, one of the most prominent business leaders in Peru, as president of the National Confederation of Private Industry, otherwise known as CONFIEP, as you heard in the IDB president's remarks, the leader of KPMG in Peru, and co-chair of the Americas Business Dialogue's Transparency and Regulatory Working Group. Roberto and Oscar, it's a pleasure to see you both again. Thank you for being with us today. Let's delve right into the conversation. And I'm going to start with you, Oscar. Could you please share your views with everyone in attendance today on the importance of collective action to fostering ethics and integrity, as well as to combat corruption, of course? How has your own experience informed the way you approach such collective action initiatives in Peru or elsewhere?
Thank you, Andrew. First, for the invitation to participate in this event and share our experience in Peru and in CONFIEP. And I also want to thank the IDB and Roberto for their support and technical assistance along the process that we are going through, and also thank IDB President Mauricio Claver-Carone for his initial words and call to action. So Andrew, right to your question, as you might know, Peru has been going through some period of instability, and one of the main problems that we had to deal with is the lack of ethics and corruption, and this has been ingrained for many years at all national levels. No, this is not only for big business and for big private and public relationship, but this is also in the daily life experience of the citizens, that they need to deal with the bureaucracy and state that requires, in some cases, certain level of facilitation payments to be able to operate normally. So this goes beyond the compliance, and has become in a certain way a cultural issue. So this is a problem not only of the big leagues and the big public and private but it is a problem from all aspects of society. So that's why we need to approach it in such a way. We can say that because of this reason, the private sector has been impacted significantly, in our reputation, and it's been questioned in every time that we raise our hand to say something, then we are accused of being corrupt. So we lost credibility, and that's a big issue with the importance of the private sector in the whole lives. So. And we believe that one of the root causes of why Peru is going through so many development issues and questions about the model of development and that has ended in a government that has different ways of thinking of how we should achieve that development is a corruption that has not allowed the funds to go in the right direction and solve the social gaps in health, education, among others. So it's very important that we deal with this, and the private sector is playing a leading role and is very committed to make sure that we can generate impact. But before we generate impact on the social dimension, we need to make sure that there's no questioning on our ethics behaviors, and our responsible business conduct. So what we are seeing is that there's significant initiatives that require these collective actions, and that the main objective is to regain trust among all stakeholders. So, for example, there's a project that I really like to highlight from time to time. It's being led by USAID, and it's called Transparent Public Investment, and have different dimensions. It's a very comprehensive project to promote integrity. But this is, we are collaborating with this project through Entrepreneurs for Integrity. I'm also president of that organization, and CONFIEP has become an ally as well of the project. But what they are doing is promoting integrity, promoting preventive corruption systems in 5 regions in Peru, not only in Lima, in the capital, but also for medium business in the construction value chain, which was one of the sectors where the problem has generated a lot of impact. So here we have the collective action of the collective actions of many players: the private, the public, the Secretaría de Integridad Pública from Peru. We have the American Chamber of Commerce getting involved, the Chamber of Constructions at the regional level, the regional government leaders, and of course the small and medium businesses from the construction value chain working together to generate consciousness of the need of change and embracing integrity, ethics, and anti-corruption systems to make sure that we start changing things. So for me, collective actions and examples like that are really important to highlight. And one more, of course, is what we are doing from the American Business Dialogues, this space for advocacy in the region, led by the private and facilitated by the IDB, working in the Transparency and Regulatory Convergence Working Group. We are promoting also at this collective level actions to improve ethics and anti-corruption measures within the region.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Oscar. And I look forward in the course of our discussion today to getting into some more details around some of the good work that the America's Business Dialogue, the IDB, and CONFIEP have been working on. But your comments are quite insightful from the standpoint of not only sharing specific examples that others can learn from that you've cited, but also your emphasis on process and systems and how that can't really be ignored. You have to delve into those details. Roberto, same question to you. How can you share your views on the importance of collective action, and how have your own experiences informed the way you approach such initiatives?
Sure. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for the invitation, and congratulations on a terrific forum. and a great level of discussion on a very significant topic. Difficult to bring anything new after what my president and Oscar have just said about the importance of this topic. Just let me add a couple of things. We all need trust to develop. The government needs trust to work, and the private sector depends on trust for commercial, economic interactions among the private sector and between the private sector and the government. Corruption, lack of transparency, and lack of integrity divorce that trust, consumes trust. So the big challenge of collective action is how to counteract that process by producing trust. So the whole framework behind the Americas Business Dialogue Working Group on Transparency and Integrity and the project we are developing with CONFIEP in Peru is about rebuilding trust, producing trust. And the way you produce trust is basically by aligning rules with behavior. You can have the best rules or the best codes of ethics, but if you behave differently, people are not only going to will not trust you, will not trust your rules. So the challenge that CONFIEP and others are leading in Peru with our very happy and glad support is an effort to rebuilding trust. It is not easy. It is a challenge. I don't want to sugarcoat this problem because it takes a lot of effort. And Oscar is very honest in painting the real picture. Some people, some countries are not starting from the best position, but it's never late to take this challenge. And it's very important that we do take this challenge. The other thing that I believe we bring into this conversation is that we are stronger if we cooperate with others. As Oscar mentioned, we are coordinating with USAID, we're coordinating with other stakeholders from the multilateral environment, but also from the private sector in Peru and the public sector in Peru. At the end, I think these are some elements for a successful recipe in the long run. It is not a sprint, it is a marathon, but it takes step by step to recreate and reconstruct trust in the private sector and trust between the private sector and government.
Yeah, thank you, Roberto. I think all of us and many in the audience will be well aware of the phrase, right? It takes a long time to earn trust, but trust can be eliminated very quickly. I think your comments take us a step further, and I really liked what you said. You kind of you characterize trust as in the form of capital, right? Trust, the point of it is trust doesn't exist, as you said, or cannot be produced when you have a disconnect between rules and standards, whether it's something enforced by the public sector through the government or voluntary, right, which we talked about through things like codes of conduct, and the behavior itself. And this puts a huge amount of focus on how do we make sure that in order to produce that trust capital, right, that we're achieving initiatives that aim to get at that linkage. So that's very insightful, Roberto. Oscar, I'd like to turn the floor back to you. And you started to talk a little bit about what CONFIEP is doing today to advance collective actions and other initiatives to foster ethics and integrity and corruption prevention. Can you tell us a little bit more about what CONFIEP is doing and kind of get into some of the nitty-gritty for members of the audience who may be looking to improve the collective actions they're a part of or to start new ones?
Sure, Andrew. And I think Roberto's comments were right on point, and it's at the center of our challenge and what we are trying to achieve and overcome here in Peru and in CONFIEP. No, I think it's important to first for the audience to understand what is CONFIEP. CONFIEP is a business union, a business association, conformed of 22 business unions in 10 different business sectors. That includes that they go from agribusiness, banking, insurance, mining, oil and gas, energy, the fishing industry, cement industry, pharmaceuticals, retail shopping, foreign trade, media. And we also have one of our 22 members are the small and medium business. So we have thousands of business associations associated to the business, 22 business associations as well. So We represent in our sectors around 75% of GDP in Peru. So it's very representative, very diverse, and in different levels of development. So this is quite a challenge to achieve. And the problem is that the loss of trust is a consequence of the bad behavior of a few that have been generalized as an image of the private sector for those actions, but also for some groups of people that want to see confrontation between public and private or workers and business. So we have a challenge that we generate not only a lot of contribution to the GDP, but also we have a lot of positive impact in the country development and welfare of the people. However, that is not recognized because of the lack of trust. So if we don't solve the trust issue and the integrity issue, our contributions, what we want to achieve in a country is not seen. It doesn't exist. So that's why we look for an organization that could really help us develop this, and we found a great partner in the IDB, and especially in Roberto that is leading this. What we're doing, our main goal is to rebuild trust, and to achieve this with the technical assistance of the IDB. What we're doing is we are reviewing our code of ethics. We are raising the bar in terms of our integrity standards in different dimensions of integrity, and we are implementing an integrity compliance systems that include policies in such areas as anti-corruption, conflict of interest, transparency and disclosure of information, antitrust and free competition, human rights, sustainability and environmental protection, and anti-money laundering. No? So it's very comprehensive. So we are approaching this in a phased way with developing a roadmap, prioritizing some areas to start with, which are some urgent matters. And what we are going to do is basically by reviewing and generating a new standard at CONFIEP level, that's going to drill down to the 22 business associations that we represent. And to start the process, we are going to be signing a business integrity pact, no, that we are committed with, and that we will launch how this is going to be deployed across all our business associations. And our system is going to be alive. You know, it's not only reviewing the code of conduct. So the IDB has been bringing some very interesting ideas. I come from the sector of compliance, so I know, but they brought some ideas to implement mechanisms to ensure compliance and how we keep updating the system as well, and also some external views to monitor with periodic evaluations, and also a consultation, but that includes as well a whistleblower system. So we are basically opening ourselves to the general public, and the scrutiny and monitoring of the general public to make sure that what we are committing to in our code of conduct, we are really living and practicing them, and we are not deviating for those. No, so thanks to this initiative, we expect to regain the trust and legitimacy that we require as the business sector with society, and claim that role that we really need as an engine of economic and social development.
That's really terrific to hear, Oscar, especially about the comprehensive nature of this type of partnership. And so thank you for sharing some of those details. Roberto, same question over to you from the IDB perspective. You know, Oscar's just sort of given a nice overview of some of the key areas of the partnership, but whether we're talking about this particular partnership with CONFIEP and the bank, or more broadly, could you share a little bit more about what the bank is doing in terms of collective action or other initiatives to prevent corruption?
Sure, Andrew. First of all, let me just add one thing. It is a terrific experience to work with CONFIEP in Peru. We are also learning by working with them. We are very much aware of one thing that Oscar just mentioned. What we are helping CONFIEP develop in Peru within a general framework will probably be different if we do this in Honduras or in Panama. And why is that? Because every country and every context is different. Of course, in every country, you have a health sector and you have an infrastructure sector. But at the end of the day, the way we focus our work is contextual. We want to make sure that this works in Peru. And therefore, once this works in Peru, others may learn and adopt an experience according to their own country. So my first comment is that we do not have a one-size-fits-all approach. We are pretty much aligned with the context in which we're working. The second one is that, as President Claver-Carone mentioned, all of this is part of our approach within the Americas Business Dialogue and the Transparency Fund of the IDB. So in other countries, we are helping, for example, in Panama, we're about to kickstart a similar experience with the banking sector and with Superintendencia de Bancos. We had some previous experience to develop anti-corruption regulations for the private sector in Ecuador and in other countries. Now we're moving to include the whole sector in Panama. So beyond what, and this is something very important that Oscar just mentioned, beyond what is a legal requirement in your country, what else you need to do as a private sector entity, as a union, to make sure that you are a step ahead of the law, a step ahead of the requirements that we all have to comply with as business people, as citizens, or as public officials. So one additional key element here is we need to make sure that those standards have as a basis, as a starting point, we will all comply with it. The second one, very important, Oscar mentioned, and is also part of our approach. This is not carved in stone. This is dynamic. It needs to adjust. It needs to be reviewed. And there's absolutely no country that I am aware of that has not had some sort of issue or scandal or problem. The key here is that we need to learn from those situations and make sure that we take the lessons from those cases and transform them into a way in which we try not to happen again. We try to prevent those issues from happening again. The third point I would like to mention as part of our experience in other regions and in other parts of Latin America and the Caribbean is that it is very important to bring everyone into the conversation. No one here has the final answer to these problems because, as Oscar and Mauricio just said, these are very complex problems. So there's not something like the ultimate response to all our ethics doubts or challenges. That is why, and this is something very important Oscar mentioned, our proposal in CONFIEP, with CONFIEP and in other countries is we need to have consultation mechanisms to make sure that before something is happening or before a decision is made, people have the best possible advice on the course of action. That can help people avoid and companies avoid situations in which they do not want to find themselves in. Of course, there are some clear-cut examples. It is absolutely forbidden. It is illegal to pay a bribe. But there are other situations that are a bit more complicated. And having a mechanism to provide advice to those situations is probably as important as having a rule that says you should not do this or you should not do that. So those are three elements that we are seeing in the rest of the region. And again, as Mauricio mentioned, it is very important to have not only the support of the member countries of the Transparency Fund, but support of the private sector like Microsoft that is helping us with Inversiones that helps bring full transparency to public investment with the use of technology.
Yeah, that's really terrific, Roberto. Thank you and Oscar for sharing what exactly it is that you're working on. Let's maybe delve a little bit deeper, if you both don't mind, in terms of, let's talk about what works and what doesn't work. I think where the rubber meets the road, from your own experience, as you look at collective actions that may have happened in the past or things that are ongoing presently, what are some of the key attributes that you can say makes these initiatives successful, and what are those where they just don't succeed, in achieving their ultimate objective? So maybe Oscar, we'll start with you.
Yes, Andrew, and that's a great question. We have several initiatives going through right now as we speak. One of them I already mentioned through Entrepreneurs for Integrity. What we are promoting is that companies implement the anti-corruption preventing model, and they certificate it, not only for legal coverage, let's say, but also to make sure that this is well known and publicized with their stakeholders and communicated broadly, and people understand that this is a company that acts with integrity. And what we learned here is that we started with big business, and we designed a very robust and demanding in terms of complexity and their components in the model. So that was not available for the medium and small business, and this is a problem at all levels. So we learned that we needed to have segment the market and make sure that we have certifications from large, medium, and small business. So we did that along the way. We also understood that this is not a problem of Lima, the capital, and that's why we partner with USA to take it at a national level, and that also helped to make sure that the problem is so large that this needs to be scalable. So I would say that that's a key learning. We need to think how this is going to scale up, and make sure that we really create an impact. So that's something that we learned. The other thing is that we learned that if we as businesses, the business sector, start raising the bar in terms of integrity and the way we act, and we don't see the same level of change at the public sector, at the government, different entities side, we have really a problem. Then you have the justification why you need to break your own code of conduct because you need to operate or do business. So what we decided is that we needed to promote whistleblowing, and we partner with the National Controllership to create a mechanism that has kind of a fast track, and we started promoting people to start raising the hand when they find an issue along the way. So this has been a very interesting project, how it has evolved. We have another initiative from the private sector, which is called the Anti-Corruption Business Council. We have different business associations being part of it. I'm sitting at the board as well. And the problem there was that we were doing things among the businesses and nobody knew about it. So communication is critical. So it's not enough that we know that we are acting with integrity and following our code of ethics. It's very important that the general public gets to know this. So we started different campaigns in social media to give more visibility. So, and then we also learned that we needed to go beyond business. So we needed to do some advocacy and generate awareness that some of the areas where the public sector, the government needs to make change as well. So at the CPA, we amplified our scope of action to make sure that we raise the hand when we see something on the other side that also needs to improve to make sure that things become effective.
Yeah, thank you, Oscar. That's great. Really helpful insights. Roberto, same question to you. Where the rubber meets the road, where have you seen things go well? What are some of the key traits of those? And when things aren't going as well, what are some sort of key insights you've gleaned from those?
Sure. And let me bring examples for our concrete experience with CONFIEP. First, Oscar is actually the spearhead of a larger commitment from the private sector. Before this program was launched with CONFIEP, we had meetings with the shareholders of CONFIEP, with the companies that are part of CONFIEP, and they bought in the program. So from day one, there was full support from the board of CONFIEP. And there's an agreement with the board of CONFIEP on the components of the program. This has been critical. Having the commitment from the top, but also having very open, honest, and candid discussions at that level about what I think is the next element that may help success, which is, let's do something, as Oscar says, that raises the bar, but is realistic. We cannot make commitments that we cannot fulfill. That's probably something that if I want to recommend something in the negative side is, do not engage in commitments that you're not ready to fulfill. Why is that? Because those kind of decisions may eventually take away the trust that you're trying to build. On the other hand, as Oscar mentioned, there are several commitments that Oscar mentioned that were not on the table when we started. And these new commitments in terms of human rights, in terms of the environment, in terms of inclusion, those commitments are terribly important, not because of what they say only, but also because of the mechanisms that CONFIEP is developing to make those commitments operational. So here's the second element of success. Make sure that what you decide to do is something that you can achieve. The third element that I think is present in a recipe for success is, and this again, I'm trailing behind Oscar's words, is make sure that you reach out to others. So we are part of this effort, but we're not the only ones behind this effort. So the broader the coalition, the broader the conversation, the better. Bring everyone around the table, have open discussions, make sure that people are ready to commit. There are many practices, not only between the private sector and the public sector, there are many practices between the private sector that need to change. And in order to get to those practices, you need to make commitments before you start writing the rules and before you start adopting the mechanisms. And in order to do that, and I think it goes back to your initial question, and it goes to one of the topics in the panels after our panel, that is why you need collective action, because collective action will help you stabilize those agreements. Make sure that those agreements will hold with time. Will hold on time on normal times, but also more importantly, will hold in time when you have a crisis. So those are the two scenarios in which you want to test your commitment. In normal times, we all define, but the system should be active and working. And the test comes when you have a crisis, when you have an issue. How does the system react? Perhaps down the road, when we kickstart, we launch the whole system, the integrity commitment, as Oscar said, we can meet again and share our experience so others can learn from us, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roberto. So let me recap for the audience a little bit some of the key things I've just heard in this latest exchange, which is tremendously insightful. First, the important comment that Oscar made about public-private alignment. I think that this is really important and something that sometimes in this space we tend not to always see. We see the public sector moving out front without the private sector, or vice versa. We see the private sector trying to do something without the buy-in of the right public sector agencies, or there are political crosswinds that are interfering with the ability to drive progress. So I think that that's really important in understanding that environment well. And then Roberto, you mentioned a couple of other elements too that I'll recap for the audience. You mentioned the importance of tone at the top and the role of leadership. You talked about the importance of words, right? But also actions. And that's what I suppose we all mean when we say walking the talk, right? Leadership needs to set the tone, but then demonstrate the actions, including through things like mechanisms. You also talked about sticking to the commitments that you make and making the commitments that you know are achievable, which I think is very insightful. And then of course, proactive outreach and inclusiveness as a key fundamental pillar of collective action. And then as by extension, creating an avenue for mutual accountability. If there's no mutual accountability, you're then going to see sort of the cards fall down, right? In terms of ultimately failing to live up to the commitment, et cetera. There needs to be an accountability element to this type of collective action. We have about a minute or so left, and I'd like to take the prerogative as the moderator to ask one quick final question to both of you, if that's okay. Can you just in a couple of seconds, maybe 30 seconds or so, just tell us a little bit more about how you think the region is changing in this space, right? And where maybe the needs are greatest, right? You know, as you look holistically. So Oscar, over to you.
Well, I think that the region is raising and changing in terms of awareness to start with. So I think that this is like some years ago when we talk about gender equality, and it took some time to get there, and now it's part of all organizations and all conversations. I think that the fact that we need to have integrity in all organizations, in all of ways of life, I think it's not in question anymore. No, however, it is a great challenge because it's not easy to change when you have been living like that, with a lack of integrity or with corruption in different places or instances of lives of society for many years. So it's good to have that awareness, and I think it's a great start, but I think we still have a long way to go in a region that requires that the funds and the initiatives goes directed in the right way to solve the social issues and regain trust. So I think we have a great challenge ahead of us.
Thank you very much, Oscar. And Roberto, same question to you. How is the region changing, and where do you see some of the greatest needs as we look ahead?
One positive change I see in the region on the private sector side is something that Oscar mentioned, and is very important. The integrity and transparency discussion is not a discussion or an issue just for large companies anymore. We are all concerned about medium and small sized companies, making sure that the larger companies can help them join this conversation. And this is very important because in our region, small and medium-sized firms have a lot of weight in the economy, but sometimes they do not have the capacity or the resources to engage in these programs. I think collective action is bringing that around and helping the smaller companies join this conversation. That is a very positive situation. I also coincide with Oscar, but let me put it in a positive way. The COVID-19 crisis had put on the table the importance of being more accountable, both on the public and the private side. We have a fiscal crisis because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Everyone should be more aware than in any other time that managing public resources with transparency and integrity is of the utmost importance. Otherwise, we will not be able to overcome the challenges of development.
Very well said, Roberto and Oscar, both. Thank you so much for your leadership throughout the region and on behalf of this forum's many partners, including the IDB. We really look forward to our continued close collaboration together. So thank you both for your time and for your leadership. Thanks again.